So, what if the history you learned in school wasn't the whole story? What if it was, edited and not slowly over centuries, but all at once in a single night by just six people in a secret hotel room? Okay, let's dive into a story that was supposedly kept under wraps for over 70 years. It all starts with one woman in Moscow who finally decided it was time to talk. These are the words of Galina Petropavna, a housekeeper at the Hotel Metropole back in 1952. In this one sentence, wow, it's really the key that unlocks this entire theory. It's not about a mistake or a misunderstanding. It's a claim of a deliberate, calculated decision to just erase the past. And get this, the date is apparently February 14th, Valentine's Day. So while much of the world is thinking about romance, the story goes that in Moscow, something much bigger was going down. And Galina, who was just a young woman at the time, she's the one who supposedly saw it all. Now, the location itself is a huge part of the mystery. Suite 47, according to the sources, wasn't just some random hotel room. It was built for secrets. We're talking soundproofed, high security, the works. And then, after 1955, poof, it officially vanishes. Wiped from the hotel's own blueprints. I mean, if you're going to have a meeting that never happened, that's the place to do it. Galina's account is full of these really vivid details. She remembers 6 men, all arriving one by one. She saw the room not set up for a dinner, but just covered wall to wall with old, strange-looking maps. And what she saw afterward is what really sticks with you. A fireplace choked with ash, the smell of burnt paper hanging in the air, and one of the men just sitting there, crying, without making a sound. What on earth were they doing in there? So Galina's story on its own is pretty compelling, right? But here's where it gets even more interesting. According to this theory, she wasn't the only one. Her testimony is apparently backed up by 2 other people who were also there that night, and each of them adds another piece to the puzzle. And here's how all those pieces supposedly fit together. You've got the housekeeper, who sees the physical evidence, the burnt maps. Then you have the translator, Ivan, who was inside the room and heard what they were burning. And finally the guard, Dmitri, stationed outside the door, who heard shouting and smelled the smoke. 3 totally different perspectives, all telling the same, really disturbing story. And this is it. This is the word at the heart of the whole thing, Tartaria. The translator, Ivan, said he'd never even heard it before, but the way they said it, it was like a curse. Believers in this theory claim that Tartaria was this massive, advanced global civilization, and that its very existence was what this meeting was all about. And apparently it was not a unanimous decision. Ivan claimed he overheard a heated argument. The Soviet delegate accused the others of murdering history. But the response, supposedly from the American, was that they were actually protecting it. So this wasn't some easy choice. It was a deep, fundamental conflict about what history should be. And as the meeting ended, the guard, Dmitri, was supposedly given this chillingly simple instruction from the British delegate. It wasn't a question, it was a command. You weren't here tonight. I mean, that just says it all, doesn't it? It highlights the absolute secrecy and the threat hanging over everything. He was a witness being erased, just like the history in that fireplace. Okay, so a decision gets made in a secret room in Moscow. But how in the world do you pull something like that off on a global scale? This next part of the story follows the alleged trail of evidence, showing how this protocol supposedly spread from that one room to libraries and archives thousands of miles away. When you lay out the timeline, a pretty clear pattern seems to emerge. Just over a year after that Moscow meeting, an archivist in Washington, D.C. reports that maps are disappearing. A year after that, a librarian in Berlin documents an entire 800-volume collection being walled off, then completely vanishing. It really suggests a coordinated international effort. Over in Washington, the story goes that a young archivist named Margaret Shen came across these incredible maps showing a huge empire called Tartaria. She asked her boss about it, and the official story she got was, oh, they're just elaborate hoaxes. A very convenient explanation, right? And shortly after she asked, she was transferred, and those maps were gone. The story out of Berlin is even crazier. A librarian named Werner Hoffmann supposedly finds an entire secret room filled with 800 books on Tartaria. And again, his supervisor says, nope, all forgeries. Then they literally welded the door to the room shut. When Hoffmann managed to get back in a few weeks later, it was completely empty. Every single book gone without a trace. For decades, all of this was just a collection of strange stories. But then, in 2019, what some people call the smoking gun supposedly turned up. A locked box is opened as part of an estate, and inside is an old reel-to-reel tape. And the date written on the label? You guessed it, February 14th, 1952. The claim is that someone in Suite 47 was secretly recording the whole thing. And on this alleged recording, you can hear a voice struggling with the sheer scale of what they're trying to do. The voice asks the one question that matters. How do we explain that away? How do you make an entire empire that's on maps for centuries just vanish from the history books? Well, the tape supposedly provides the answer. And it wasn't just a simple order. It was this incredible 6-phase, multi-generational plan. Reclassify the evidence, rewrite the textbooks, train new historians who only know the new story, and pull everything from public view. But that last step, that's the one that gives me chills. Just wait. Wait for everyone who remembers the way things were to be gone. This is supposedly the last thing you hear on that tape. It just perfectly captures the unbelievable ambition of the whole plan. The goal wasn't just to hide something. The goal was to erase the fact that a choice was ever made in the first place, so that no one would ever even know there was something to question. But even within the system, some people supposedly knew what was happening. For 24 years, a Soviet archivist named Alexandra Livan-Karvina is said to have risked her life. Night after night, she secretly made copies of official directives, building her own secret archive of the documents that proved the official one was being systematically purged. And her collection of documents allegedly shows the whole bureaucratic machine kicking into gear right after that meeting in Moscow. These weren't just suggestions, they were official orders sent to museums, schools, and archives, all using this kind of coded language, like discredited Asian empires or obsolete cartographic terminology, to systematically wipe the word Tartaria off the map. So, if this massive cover-up really did happen, what's left behind? What are the clues they couldn't get rid of? This last section is all about those lingering questions, the physical evidence that, according to this theory, the official history just can't seem to explain. And we come back full circle to Galina, the housekeeper who started this whole thing. Her final thought on it is just so powerful. You can burn maps, you can rewrite books, but you can't tear down every building. You can't erase the things that just don't fit the new story, what she calls the impossibility. Which brings us to one of those so-called impossibilities. Proponents of this theory will point to buildings in places as far apart as San Francisco, St. Petersburg, and Melbourne, and they ask a simple question. How is it that these grand structures, built by supposedly separate cultures, thousands of miles apart, all seem to share the exact same advanced architectural style? And then you have the star forts. These things are incredible feats of engineering. They're found on pretty much every continent, and they all seem to share this complex, identical geometric pattern that predates the very technology that official history says was needed to even design them. So who built them, and why are they everywhere? And really, this all leads to the final and maybe the most important question in this whole theory. Let's just say for a minute this meeting did happen. Why would 6 of the most powerful people on the planet risk everything? Not to talk about war or economics, but to all agree on a lie. What truth could possibly be so dangerous that it had to be completely erased from history?